Vivi, in searching for the meaning of God, one of the things that I have to be confronted with is the fact that there are very diverse religions in this world. How do we look at that diversity? What are the common factors, if that means anything? And then what are the differences?
Well, I think there are essential differences between the various religions that cannot be denied. All we need to do is to go through the scriptures and the basic doctrines and tenets of religions. It will make it clear to anyone that each religion is based on a different set of assumptions or revelations, whatever it is. However, it is important to recognize that there are a few commonalities, not in the details, but in the essence of religions. For example, practically all religions believe that there is something more than the physical material world. Most religions believe there is one kind of God or another, by whatever name. Most religions believe that there is some supernatural agency in the universe. And most of all religions search for some kind of a connection with the whole. Every religion is an expression of the longing that is in the human spirit, whether it came from biological evolution, cultural evolution, is a different thing. But the fact remains that these are expressions of that longing. Having said that, our question, therefore, of great interest, especially contemporary interest in the modern world, is how are we going to cope with these differences? Now, there is something called radical universalism, which was propagated by many Hindu thinkers in the late 19th, early 20th century, which said that all religions say the same. This, of course, is certainly not valid by any means. However, what the Hindu religion says is that we need to understand the basic fact that even though there may be but one God, that God is described in different ways by different people. And once we recognize this, we then begin to respect different approaches to the unfathomable mystery, if I may say so. And it is out of that mutual respect and understanding that we can establish some kind of a religious harmony, which is so badly needed in today's world.
Nobody disagrees with that. This has been a quest that goes on as far as human history is concerned, and we hope to make progress. I think one of the ways to make progress is to understand the particularisms and what are the aspects of each religion that they hold unique. From the Hindu tradition, what would you say are the overarching principles that are unique to Hinduism?
Well, I have tried to formulate 3 or 4 or 5 essential things which are probably unique to Hinduism. If not unique, they're certainly characteristic of. One of them is a dichotomy between 2 kinds of realities. One, the physical reality, the reality of which we become aware through our perceptual senses and our analytical modes and our intellect, which is an extraordinarily important kind of reality. But there is also another kind of reality, there are technical terms in the Hindu world, para and apara, they would say, where it is a kind of reality that is transcendental. And efforts to grasp that transcendental reality through the analytical modes are often futile, if not always. And that is one of the tenets of the Hindu world. The other is that it is possible to get glimpses of that world beyond through the spiritual disciplines of meditation and the like. And another is that there are multiple paths to the recognition of that spiritual truth, and the paths include atheism, if that's what one wants, because the meaning there is we find meaning and purpose and fulfillment as human beings by these different modes. And once we recognize that, we also are forced, as it were, to respect the different perspectives. And all of this is based, incidentally, on another important recognition, and that is the finitude of the human mind. The human mind is enormously powerful, and it is finite, and therefore its grasp of the infinite is limited.
If there are these diverse paths to truth, is any one or any series more privileged than the other, being a better way?
That is exactly what I would call the exclusivist perspective. And that is, if I may say so, the ailment from which many religions, if not all religions, have suffered over the ages.
Well, I would say the exclusivism says not there are multiple ways, but there's my way and then there's the highway. I mean, it's either my way is right and everything else is wrong.
Exactly.
What I hear you saying about the Hindu tradition is there are multiple ways, and I'm just saying, do they say that there are multiple ways, but one may be better or more effective than others?
Well, it is one of those logical paradoxes. Because of the multiple ways, the one which says there are multiple ways is the privileged one. So it makes it a little difficult in that way to argue for it. But from there are people, usually those who say there are not many ways, multiple paths, are the ones who regard their own path as exclusivist. Now, there is nothing wrong in this within traditions. It is somewhat like if somebody on the planet Earth is asked, which is the most important star? Is there such a thing as a most? Of course, it is the sun. But from that to conclude that there are no other stars, and that people living in other planetary systems should regard our sun as the most important would be somewhat ridiculous if you have a cosmic perspective. So it's somewhat like that, this exclusivist approach to religion, at least from my personal perspective and from, I think, from the larger Hindu perspective, is precisely this, that without diminishing the importance and significance of the many different faith systems in the world, one can still argue that to regard one of them as superior or inferior to another is somewhat short-sighted, and more seriously could lead to the kinds of confrontations that we often find in the world.
But in Hinduism, one certainly sees different Hindu sects which seem to claim a similar kind of particularism that Western sects and Christianity do. So I don't think anybody's immune to that kind of sectarianism.
Absolutely not. I was just going to add that not when we're talking about universalism, particularly in religion, I was going to add not just amongst religion, but even within religions, amongst the sects and subsects which characterize practically all the great religions of the world, there are fundamental differences. The question is, how far the practitioners of a faith go beyond that and recognize that the essence of these religious quests is what matters, not the particular doctrinal differences that become relevant within historical and geographical and cultural contexts.
I would think that very few serious adherents to religions in all cultures have that view.
I am afraid that is a historical fact, and I think...
A contemporary fact.
Yeah, and also historical, because there have been all the persecutions between different sects in any of the great religions are attributable to this somewhat naive, to me it seems, conviction that our own path is the only right one. It may be the only most fulfilling one for ourselves, which is fair. But to say that others should follow the same path is where, and this unfortunately is something from which even some atheists suffer, because they too are convinced that their own path is the ultimate truth. So we need to develop that sensitivity for other modes insofar as they do not hurt and harm others, because that's very important in terms of respecting all paths to fulfillment.